which situation would you prefer to have? Because on paper, it looks like the Vikings are closer to contending for a Super Bowl, but you look at where they're at with their cap situation right now, it does kind of make you wonder. And then you look at the Browns, they're making all these moves. They're trading for Odell Beckham, and they signed Sheldon Richardson, who was with the Vikings last year. And they've got this young, up-and-coming, exciting quarterback that's going to be on a cheap contract for the next couple of years. You do have to ask the question of which position would you rather be in? Which situation would you rather have? And we know in this league, things can turn around very, very quickly.
Yeah.
The Browns were 1 in 36?
1 in 31 the past two
seasons.
Yeah.
And I don't know how close they are to going to a Super Bowl in 2019. I know Danny believes that they are. But
I mean, they're as close as February 4th it is, I think. So it's like 300 days away.
But you do
we might have to kick him out at some point.
But I think you do have to look at where the Browns are at and believe that they do have something cooking right now, especially picking up Odell Beckham Jr. And you do have to ask the question of which situation would you rather have?
I think the biggest difference in the Browns being able to afford to do this isn't necessarily the draft capital that they had or the assets that they had built up. It's that they've got their franchise quarterback and he's on a rookie contract. Kirk Cousins is the guy that the Vikings believe is the franchise quarterback. He's on a 3-year, $84 million guaranteed deal. That's the difference. The Vikings can't go out and spend that money. They don't have that money to spend.
Right.
The Browns entered this offseason with the third most amount of cap space and their franchise guy making pennies on the dollar for what he's actually worth. That's where the biggest difference lies. It's not, oh, well, these guys are so much more talented or whatever, because entering this offseason, the Vikings had more talent than the Browns. The Browns' talent was younger than the Vikings, but the biggest difference is the Browns quarterback isn't making nearly the amount of money that Kirk Cousins is making. So they can afford to go out and get all of these excellent skill players to put around them. They can build an awesome defensive line with Olivier Vernon and Sheldon Richardson stealing him away from the Vikings. They can do that because they've got the money because they're not paying a quarterback right now.
Yeah, and what this is, and as Manny pointed out, this can happen very, very fast, but it's one organization where the window is just opening up now and another organization where the window is starting to close as far as your chance at winning a Super Bowl. And that window usually coincides with what you're paying your quarterback.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's a quarterback-driven league. So you would think once you sign that quarterback to a long-term extension, now you have some security and your organization should be good to go for a while. But really, it starts the clock on how long you have to win once you give that quarterback that big contract, because an NFL team's salary is basically a pie chart. And when a quarterback takes 25 or 30% of that pie, it limits where you can allocate your other money and resources on the roster. So the Vikings, by paying Kirk Cousins, they started to sort of shut the window a little bit on their contention. And the Browns, with Baker Mayfield still on a rookie contract and a roster just filled with playmakers who were in their early to mid-20s, the window is just opening up for them, and it's wide open because you really don't see teams able to line up their core with in a similar age range the way that the Browns have done, and certainly not with the group of guys that are in their early to mid-20s. I mean, this is a wide open window now for the Browns, while the window is sort of starting to close a little bit on the Vikings.
They're essentially trying to model themselves after what the Seattle Seahawks did when they went to those Super Bowls and won one of them. And Russell Wilson was on a rookie contract. That's why they could afford to pay everyone else. And look at what those teams have become now, because Russell Wilson is making a chunk of change that he just wasn't making before. And that's the biggest difference.
And the Vikings, when you look at where the Vikings are at right now, the Vikings are still a very good team. And I think they go into 2019 with, I think, as good an opportunity to win their division and make some noise in the playoffs as anybody else in the NFC North. But when you look at where they're at financially right now, and we have been having conversations about them having to let go of key players that have been a huge part of the success that they've had under Mike Zimmer the last handful of years. Sheldon Richardson was just here for the 1 year, but he had to be let go. They had to let him go. And We're having conversations about, what are they going to do with Everson Griffin? Is he going to be back? Are they going to restructure? Kyle Rudolph, what's going to happen with him? Trade rumors about Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes, what's going to happen with him? Is there enough money for them to go out and upgrade on the offensive line? There's all these questions with the Vikings, even though they are in a good position to contend in 2019. You look at a situation like the Browns, we're not looking at them and saying, how many key players are they going to have to let go?
Mm-hmm.
How many key players of a team that won 7 games last year, how many of those guys are they going to have to cut loose to try and upgrade their roster?
We will get to that point with the Cleveland Browns. Eventually,
absolutely.
It's years off
because
in the
Baker
making,
Mayfield is going to have to get paid eventually, and they're
Or
going to be faced with the same sort of situation.
If they don't end up in that situation, things went terribly wrong, because that means that Baker Mayfield wasn't good enough to get that big contract when this one runs out. So Danny should be hoping right now that in a few years the Browns have the same problems that the Vikings are having right now, where you have to make some tough decisions after you pay your quarterback big bucks.